Aloha! My name is Dr. Fisher, and today I'm going to be talking to you about research standards. So we all know that research is very, very important. And specifically, some of the skills that you have become adept at are analyzing information within and among sources. You've been able to assess credibility of sources, and you've been able to cite evidence. When you are one skill that you could hone in on to help you understand how to categorize your evidence when you're writing a paper is for you to create a table like this, and sometimes on assessments you might see a table like this, but basically what this table does is it allows you to put in ideas, topics, themes that you want to look for. That could be your 3 reasons, right? So your 3 reasons why cell phones should not be allowed in school. They're distracting, they can lead to cheating and cyberbullying. So those reasons, as you go down, then you want to see which sources talked about it. So it helps you to identify the sources. But if you were ever asked to do a table like this and you are trying to identify from those sources, the best way that my students found to complete a table like this was to read very thoroughly, to highlight pieces of evidence, and then to mark them on the table. So basically what they would explain to me, I would ask, so what made you successful at this? What did you do? And the students were like, oh, it was easy, miss. First I read everything one time through to understand, like we always talk about doing, and then I went back and I found the 3 reasons that I was looking for, I put them on the table, and then I went through each source to find what their perspectives were and whether or not they talked about it, and I marked it on the source. So it was reading once through, reading again to find that piece of evidence, highlighting the piece of evidence, and then knowing that that piece of evidence fits in. So that's how they did it when they were looking at analyzing across text. That means more than one text. So let's look at one, for example. So here we have these sources on cell phone usage in school. It's a debate, right? So looking at this, I see that we have 1, 2, 3, 4 sources for looking at whether or not cell phones should be used in school. So of course, the first thing that I would do is I would read through each one of these articles to understand them. And then after I've read through article number 2, source number 2, source number 3, and source number 4. After I read through all of them, I would be trying to find evidence for why cell phones should be used in school and why some people argue that cell phones should be used, and then why some folks argue that cell phones should not be used. And I would start a table where I'm collecting that evidence. And my table would look something like this, where you can see the cell phones, right? We have our 4 sources, source 1, source 2, source 3, source 4. So I just fold my paper in half, fold it again in half. Well, this is how my students found that it was the easiest way for them to keep track and have it all on one piece of paper and not be overwhelmed by the way that it looked. So they would put pluses if it was for their side and minuses if it was against their side, and then they would mark what paragraph they found the pieces of evidence for and against cell phone use in the school. So they have source 1, source 2, source 3, source 4, and then just jotting each one of those pieces of evidence as they went through. And that is a great way to complete this table, because now you can see if this table was about cell phones, right? And if it had, which one talked about it being distracting. Did source 1, 2, 3, and then you'd have 4 on there also. And it would just be an easy way for you to keep track. But if you're asked to just complete a table like this, remember that the best way to do it is to find those pieces of evidence and highlight them before you just read it once and assume that you can remember. Okay, so the other thing about research that I'm sure you have become really adept at, and that is identifying the credibility of sources. So when you're identifying the credibility of sources, you're looking at pretty much two things. Who's the author? Is it an authority on what they're talking about? And where did the source come from? So I know your teachers have, because we all talk about this, all of the teachers usually talk about Wikipedia and how it's not a credible source. And the reason why Wikipedia is not a credible source is because anyone can author it. So you can go in and you can edit it. That's what makes it not a credible source. However, there are great credible sources, but in this table, one of the things you might have noticed was this SW that my students would put at the next to the source, and that was for strong or weak. And they would be identifying what is strong or weak, which articles are strong and which ones are weak, and if it's weak, they wouldn't use that evidence. So for example, they would look at this and they would say, okay, so this first source is by Ursula Kawaguchi, and it was found in the Education Today magazine. So that would make this source a credible source. It has an author, the author is from a magazine, and so I could use information from this source. And it looks like it has a lot of evidence, right? Then we have source number 2. Source 2 says, just let us use our phones. And this is by Alex B., student blogger. And even if Alex has some really fabulous things that Alex wants to say, and he researched it and did a great job, because he's a student, this would be a weak source. So we're really looking for authoritative sources, so people who are authorities on the subject, right? Experts on the subject. So this next one is written by Dr. Donna Fisher from the New York Times. So that one is a credible source because it has an author from a reputable magazine, and now you can see what evidence was in that one. Our fourth and final source is Finding Balance in the Cell Phone Debate by Dr. Matthew Krelovich from the Honolulu Advertiser, and it's an article. So again, that's a reputable source, so this is a credible source. So you would just mark, as you can see here, the first one, the case for allowing cell phones, was a strong case. Second one, just let us use our phones, by the student blogger, that one was weak. Then source 3 was strong, and the source 4 was strong. So after taking your pieces of evidence, you know that that one source, you're not going to use any of these pieces of evidence in it. So you don't even have to look at them when you're categorizing your reasons and categorizing similarities. Okay, so, and another one of the research skills that I know that you are really great at is your ability to cite all of your sources. One thing I was not always aware of with my students, and now I'm fully aware of it because I'm not only a resource teacher, but I'm also a professor at Chaminade University. So now I know for sure that all work that you put in word for word in quotes, you have to cite. But you also must cite anything that you paraphrase. So really it's any piece of evidence that you put in, you have to cite your source. And the way that we can cite our sources, and you can do this all the way up until you finish your doctorate, because it's the right way to do it, is if it's a direct quote, you could say, according to source 1. Now the first time you write the source, you might want to put the title in there. And then in parentheses, you put the directly quoted item that you're quoting. After the quote that you type in there, you put a end quotation mark, a space, and in parentheses, you put para for paragraph, period, and then whatever paragraph you found that evidence in, end parentheses, period, so that everybody knows that all of this was found in paragraph 3 of source 1. In this one, we see that we're still in source 1, but instead of saying according to, we're saying in accordance with. And I usually just balance those back and forth. So I keep going in accordance with, according to, in accordance with, according to, and then I'll say as source stated, as explained. So this is if it's paraphrased. Source 1 indicated that. Source 3 explained how. Now you don't have to use the that or the how, so don't get wrapped around that. All we're trying to do is make sure that we cite anything that we have gotten from our sources. And of course, after we cite our sources and we've put in our piece of evidence, we know that quotes don't write papers, people do. So it's absolutely imperative that next, as we all know, we will explain our evidence, connecting it to our thesis to prove that our thesis is true. All right. So let me show you what it looks like when you don't explain your evidence. So here what I've done is just typed in every piece of evidence from that. So currently there's a debate about students using cell phones in school. Many students say it brings peace of mind and makes school fun. Unfortunately, this is not accurate, and cell phones should be banned from use in school. There are several reasons why. Misuse of cell phones can be harmful academically and emotionally. Cell phone use can cause distractions in and out of the classroom. Worst of all, cell phone usage creates inequality. First, let's look at cyberbullying. One reason why cell phones should be banned is due to cell phone misuse. According to source 1 and source 3, notice how I'm talking about both sources, right? Misuse such as cyberbullying is emotional abuse that increases insecurities and lowers self-esteem. So that came from source 1 and 3. In source 3, cell phones are also misused academically for such things as cheating. Lastly, source 3 and source 4 both identify a need for cell phone monitoring in order to prevent misuse, which puts a large burden on teachers. Now, what I did was I wrote it just like this to show with every piece of evidence in there. Every piece of evidence that we thought was a good piece of evidence we put in here, and you can see that each one of our paragraphs continue to talk about it, but what is missing is we have our reason, we link it back to our topic that we're talking about, right? So our argument, our claim, but we are not putting in, we don't have any of our explanations or titles of the sources. So to improve this essay, what it needed was in that same paragraph that I just read you, it would be read to you, is one reason why cell phones should be banned is due to cell phone misuse. According to source 1, title, and then you put the title of the source. And source 3, you put the title. So the first time you mention it in the paper, you put the title of the sources. Misuse such as cyberbullying is emotional abuse that increases insecurities and lowers self-esteem. Now that's what we already said in the other one. Now is when you explain it. This means cell phones should be banned because, and then you explain it. Because, and now, because of social emotional well-being. In accordance with source 3, cell phones are also misused academically for things such as cheating. This illustrates that, and you say the topic again, cell phones should be banned because, and now what about misused academically? Would it be banned for? Could it be, should be banned because it's hurting students academically? Lastly, source 3 and source 4, you put the title, both identify a need for cell phone monitoring in order to prevent misuse, which puts large burdens on teachers. So they need cell phone monitoring. This shows that cell phones should be banned from school because it puts a burden, don't say the same words in here, because it takes up teachers' time in order for them to, we don't want to say monitor again, in order for them to keep track of cell phone usage and make sure that students are doing it respectfully. So all of, however you phrase this, the point that I'm trying to make here is when you write it with just pieces of evidence, it's not enough. We must explain each piece of evidence. So that's when we're looking at all of our research and we find our pieces of evidence. We know that we put in our piece of evidence, but then we explain our piece of evidence. We put in our piece of evidence and then we explain our piece of evidence. And we don't just explain it, we explain how it connects back to the thesis. So we're really talking about explaining back to why cell phones should be banned. And we keep repeating that over and over again so that that's how we keep our focus throughout the whole paper. Okay, so great job on understanding how to do that. So again, the skills that you are becoming so skillful and such an expert at are for you to analyze information within and among sources, right? How do both sources, what were their perspectives on whatever the topic happens to be? Assess credibility of the sources, so you know that you want to find credible authors. Both the author and where it was published matter. So if it was just a research paper from a class, obviously that would not be credible, which you already know. And we just don't put that into our paper at all because we want to make sure that our paper only has credible sources. And we also want to cite our evidence, and quotes don't write papers, people do. So we explain our evidence, connecting it to our thesis to prove that it's true. All right, so that ends my presentation on what you're going to be doing when it comes to research. I know you're going to do great. Thank you for your time.